Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started tonight, 6 o'clock here Central. So I may have to mute the mics or the audio. If I do, I'll open it back up and we'll go ahead and do that now. So the first thing we're going to talk about tonight, this is a before and after student. It's just like if you look at the tab, it says it's basically a novice lesson, which golf lesson before she came out. She's been playing over around our area for a few years, and she has a really athletic swing, really a lot of really good rhythm and a lot of good tempo, but can't play. She shoots 100, and with that being said, if she has good rhythm, and with that being said, in tempo, and she's not playing good, there's other things that are going on, and that's why we talk about. When I started this program, this online program, when it really actually, my program, I would say in the last 10, 12 years, I've done my best to try to teach that timing trumps everything. So that's a reason why that you see like the Jim Furyk's, and it has an odd swing, kind of an odd, unique swing that's phenomenal, and then you've got Sergio, it's the same thing. It's a unique swing. I wouldn't say it's different, and it's got plays great golf and so forth. Some of the most odd, unique golf swings, as I've said a lot in the webinars before, are some of the most efficient, players, the ball strikers, and they look the most awkward. Chi Rodriguez, you could take it back to the history of the tour, and if you track them, the Arnold Palmers of the world, the players that look really odd and weird. Miller Barber, great ball striker, and Orville Moody, old schoolers, could just play. And Fred Couple said Orville Moody's the best ball striker he'd ever seen in his life, and just had this really kind of unique golf swing. They all do. And so, if that's the case, if they're all unique, then that kind of eliminates style and methodology. And so I've really tried to steer myself away from style and methodology the best that I possibly can, and just eliminate it to what is true timing, and then what are things that aid to better timing, and so forth. So that being said, when this player came out, I'm going to show you her before swing. And if I just ran her swing, if you saw her hitting balls from a distance, I would say 95% of the people that watched her from a distance would think that she's a very good player. When I break it down and you see her swing, obviously you're going to see, you're not going to get to see the rhythm and tempo aspects, so you're going to think, well, yeah, I understand why she struggles now. But if you look at her swing from a distance and then break it down, you'll see why her timing was off and her ball flight was off. And then I'm going to show you the after results of what we did to just improve raw timing. And then we'll go from there, and I'll open it up for questions and answers and so forth. So we'll get this started here. So she takes it back. I'm just going to let it play. And again, it's in slow motion here, so if I was just to let it play, you would see that, if it was full speed, it would be much harder to see. But she's, collapsing her wrist. This is the difference between wrist cock and side bending, and we will talk about that in a little more depth. But if you look at coming down here, now you've seen this is where I talk about the side of the shaft, why it's so important to timing, why it aids to timing. If you're, the shaft, as you would see, I'm going to do my best to draw this for you, is pointing kind of rolled out in this way. So if you look at the face, most players that have been around know that face is wide open to the plane. The plane would be a little less vertical than that. But I will say this, there's players I can show you right here that their club is that steep, but the side of the shaft isn't rolled backwards. It's angled like we talk about in our time of contact video in the side of the shaft. So obviously that shaft is rolling back. So what we're going to do here, let me run this on through. So I'm just going to break it down a little bit more, and you can see now this is one of the beauties of video and why you need to video yourself. Because if you see yourself, again, if you just watched her swing from a distance, I'm telling you, everybody thinks this girl should be a scratch player. Well, she can't break freaking 100, and you put video, and if your clip face looks like that coming into the ball, there's nobody in the history of the game ever that played the game that was any good that had the face that wide open relative to the plane. And we're going to show you the difference of what that means coming off the baseline right there. So that's just completely wide open. That's going to go straight left, as you can see, and wipes it, just tops it along the ground. But again, if you just watched her swing, it'd be very difficult to see that. So I'm going to run you through this one more time. Backswing, even here the side of the shaft is rolled back. The right wrist hasn't side bended like it should. But there's a lot of great players that are in this. Fred Couples, club is more open at the top than this. But what happens is, as soon as they come out of transition, I'll let this go. You can see she loses the grip. That's all because of wrist cock. But as soon as Fred Couples comes out of here, that face, all of a sudden, he's turning the side of the shaft at the angle that we want. He would turn the side of the shaft on this angle. He would kind of roll it back this way a little bit, so to speak. And then how much you would roll it back that way, well, that's very, I think, is about as good as I can do it. I can explain it on our videos when we start how much to do it. Well, there'll be more videos on exactly like how much that really is, and it's relative to your player, to the player. But the biggest thing is that you have to study your own videos to see this, because for her, she had no idea that she was rolling the face backwards at the top of the swing, and rolling the face completely backwards going through the shot. So again, you can see it coming through and wiping it. So I'm going to show you now what her swing looked like. Now, this was the first lesson, so this is not something that we came in and we did a million things. If you've ever been to had a lesson with me personally, you'll realize that I don't go after 1,000 things. I go after one thing, and we'll go over that. We'll go over it right now, actually. Is if you take lessons, I don't care who you take lessons with, every single golfer on here should ask if they're taking a private lesson. All right, I don't care if it's me, Butch Harmon, you take it, whoever you want to take it with. The player has the right to ask this single question, and that question is the question of that is, what's the one thing? Don't give me 10 things. A good instructor has been teaching golf for years and years and years and years, can see lots of things, and I don't think anybody debates that. And especially with video, it helps you pick up more things. But forget all that. What's the one thing that I got to do as a player? What's the one thing that's going to make me good today, right now? And if they say, well, there's actually not one thing, there's 3 things, you need to leave. And same thing with me. If I can't figure out, if you come to me and take a lesson and you ask me, hey Matt, forget, I see you got 3 things here, and I don't have the one thing that's the most dominant, I'll give you your money back, and hopefully you find a better place, because you should. So you have to find, and the player has that right. And if you ever go back, there's an article in Golf Digest that goes, it was about Scott Hoch and Chip Beck. They both went to, and I use this religiously when I talk to my students, because I thought it was one of the greatest articles that they ever put out. And it was about, Chip Beck was the one that actually they interviewed, and he was the Barton Trophy winner one year. He shot Mr. 59 again. He was kind of the second guy to do it. He'd won all this money. He goes to his caddy, and he tells him, I'm going to change my ball, I'm changing the equipment, I'm changing my golf swing, I'm changing going from a fade into a draw. Now, I may have fade and draw mixed up, but this is a guy that played a certain ball flight his whole life. He tells him he's going to do it. His caddy's about to freak out. Well, he doesn't. He changes, and he changes instructors. He goes to David Ledbetter, and I'm not blaming this on David Ledbetter, but what he did was he went to David Ledbetter, and he just said, I'm fair game. You tell me what you want me to do, and I'll do it. Well, he did that, and I think we know the story after that with Chip Beck. I mean, there's probably not a lot of players on here that let me just make sure everybody can hear me here. So there's not a lot of players that can probably on this site tonight that understand, that even know who Chip Beck really is, and he was a phenomenal player. And so my point is with that is that he went to Ledbetter and had an open book. Said, just teach me whatever. Well, Ledbetter taught him whatever, that he thought, and he gave him all these things and so forth. And the word is that he couldn't even keep it on a driving range with his driver by the time they got done with each other. Well, he ruined his career. Scott Hoch, the same exact year, went to him, and Scott Hoch said, no. He said, I want one thing. David. I don't want to know all this stuff. I don't, that's good. I can play. I almost won the Masters. Blah 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 blah. Give me one. You got one thing. David gave me one thing, and it was a phenomenal lesson. And that's why I'm not here to kind of bash David, because he gave him a fantastic lesson. I'm not sure even what it was, but Scott said that was perfect. He gave him one lesson, and it worked perfectly for him. It was the one thing he needed. It wasn't the 100 things that he needed. And that's the difference in psychology. There's a type of player that's out there, and I could go on for hours, and I won't do that tonight. But there's a certain type of player out there that's wanting. They're just dying for a coach to tell them all the secrets. And let me tell you, there ain't any of them out there. I've been doing it my whole life. There's none. And then there's a player out there that doesn't care, and they're so self-absorbed with what they're going to accomplish that they don't even have to have a coach. Bubba Watson, for example, and I could give you 100 others. Scott Hoke's another one. I could go on and on and on. Those are the ones that are most dangerous. So what I'm trying to say here, I believe my job, and I've said this on the webinars many times, some of the new guys aren't used to this, but the truth is that this program is about you taking personal responsibility of your own game and you finding you. I'm trying to help you find you. This isn't about the Matt Christian show or whatever that I've learned and all this stuff. This is about helping you find out what's the most important way that you're going to get to achieve your goals. And it's not about methodology. It's about being a gamer. And if you're going down that road and you've been around that circle of failure where you go from you went from one side to the next side to the next side to one coach to the next one, the magazines to the videos and all this, and you're playing that circle of failure, which most people that have came to us have, and then have found success by doing it, by learning about themselves. Then what I would tell you is, you just have to, when you go to our site, you have to study. You have to not be afraid to get your tripod out or your iPad out and start to study yourself and understand and find out about you. And as we go into the spring, we went through this technical section here for the last couple of months where it was all technique and really raw and all that. As you see where we're going to be starting to go now, we're going to be starting to go a different way, which is getting into gamesmanship, which is the first mountain. If you don't have that gamesmanship and that competitive feeling, you're probably not going to get very far. But I want to show you what we went after with my girl here. So as she swings back, this is the after, obviously, and all I did is I improved her turn a little bit, but that's not what we really went after. I improved the side of the shaft here. So if I went back, and let me see if I can try to match these up somewhat. I could do a better job of that. So if you look at the side of the shaft, how we angled it, it wasn't that the arms are really deep or any of that, but we rotated the side of the shaft more towards the camera, as you can see here. And most of you may know that. If you don't, you can send me an email and I'll answer it for you. But if you study the videos, it talks a lot about this. And so when we go back, now what it's going to affect is the downswing. So when we start down, now the side of the shaft, if you see here, is angled in a way. Let me draw it for you. Side of the shaft is angled where it's more resistant. It can handle the resistance. If it was turned this way, which would be wrist cock, what would happen would be and rolled open. What would happen would be that it would be really flimsy. The shaft, she wouldn't have any energy in it, and that's what she had before. She had nothing. Okay. So as we go down, I'm going to show you the difference. So some people are so focused on positions. If you look at the position, here's before. So you can see the difference, and we're not all the way exact here, but this club head, as we talk about in our videos, it's behind the hands here, you can see. Alright? So as we go into before, the club head is outside the hands on the baseline. And then if you just look at the basic angle, a lot of you are going to look at the face, which is fine, but it's the angle of the shaft. And that's why it's so important to deal with it. So her delivery here Now it's just a piece of cake. I mean, that's going to be right square right in the back of the ball. I mean, it's common sense. So, and that's with not even good body mechanics. So her body mechanics aren't even what we really worked on here. We didn't really do anything with her body, but we did fix the side of the shaft. And so when we fix the side of the shaft, I'm just going to let it play on through here. And so if you watch here, she's hitting that ball. Oh, I'll put it to you this way, is she was hitting her 8-iron about 70 yards when she started. That shot right there is a gap wedge for her, and that went the same distance. And she has half the swing. So obviously, she went on first. She may be on here tonight, but when she went further up, well, then obviously it just got more powerful and more powerful. I mean, she was just cranking it. I mean, but this was pretty much a gimme. But there's so many players that they're on the program that they'll have similar looks to this. So this isn't like something that, oh yeah, well, it's just the lady that's out here and doesn't know what she's doing or anything. I'm telling you now, that's not the case. She's a very good athlete. She got a beautiful looking golf swing. But when we got to the basics and turned the side of the shaft the correct way, which is what we always preach, it took the hand action and the manipulation out, and it allowed her to strike and deliver the club on an inside path, but then back to the inside like you're supposed to. So when she was delivering before, like, this is definitely an over the top. We've talked about over the top quite a bit in the past. So when we go up and we go to the, let's let it go here, and I'll show you what true over the top is. Steep and over the top are different, and I'll explain that. So as soon as that club right there, that's close, that's very steep. It's not over the top yet, but the next frame would be. Steep is the angle of the shaft, so I'll explain this. So that's the angle, angle of the shaft. Whenever the club head moves outside, truly outside the hands, like if it was right here, that would be over the top, where the club head is truly over outside the hands. And that's important to know, because when you're studying your video, somebody would look at this and say, you know, you can't play from right here. Well, I can assure you, Carl Peterson, Fred Couples played from right here. So the difference was that they had the side of the shaft angled a different way. So what you don't want to get confused with is the angle of the shaft. All right, in the follow-up video, I'll hopefully make more sense when I say this. The arm angle, where the arms actually are, and the steepness of the shaft versus the rotation of the shaft. And some of you on here will understand that, and there will be some of you on here that will not. And it's okay if you don't. When I open up for questions and answers, I'll do my best. And then when I make the follow-up video, I will definitely make sure that I help you understand the difference of the angle. The angle's not what's killing her here. It's the side of the shaft, how it's rotated incorrectly. So that's one of those that's hard to just sit here and talk about. So anyway, so that's before. Now it's over the top off the baseline. The club head is definitely outside the hands, and it's wide open. And you can see if we back that up, she's hitting this ball, you know, a direct hit, bam, you know, no problem. And you can see how her whole body is torquing in here. And now you're getting to see the true. Like I said, she's a very good athlete. I don't know if she's even broken 100 yet. But if you watched her, I'm telling you, from a distance, even I would have picked it if I didn't see her break down her swing from a distance. I would have said, oh yeah, I think she's low 80s. Very good player. So her rhythm and tempo are fantastic, but her form with raw timing was no good. And then so this was a baby swing. I've got more swings of her where you can see it go all the way back. Because I'm sure some players on here are going, well, that's just a half swing or whatever. Well, I'm telling you, the only thing that happens is when you do that, it just got better. The club laid on, if you like backswings and all that, it just looked prettier. The downswing looked prettier, and the impact got better. So, and the results, it definitely proved to be the right thing to work on. And so that's one of the things that all I can say. We've still got a lot. She and I have a lot of work left, and I'll keep you posted, like where we're going, like I try to do on these webinars, where and through some of the videos I email out to you in the webinar program. I'll keep you posted with where she's at and just show you her status, because you'll be blown away where she ends up. And it was literally, all we did was fix the side of the shaft. So I had her turn it. She made her takeaway off the table. I had her bend the shaft the right way, and that was it. So now instead of being a player that's completely over the top, now she's a player that plays, you know, like a club champion. And now if you watch her, if you said, you know, even if you watch here, I'm going to show you something. So her this is the after swing. So if you look at here, I didn't mess with her posture. Her posture is not any good. She's sitting back on her heels. I could touch her. I could just take if I pushed her on her shoulders right here, she'd fall down. You couldn't. There's no way she could resist that. She's got too much knee flex. She's got a lot of different things. All her weight's in her heels. Blah 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 blah. But what my point is like you said, you only get one thing. What's the one thing that's going to make things change today? So when I worked with her and her ball flight started to improve, I never touched her posture. I didn't touch her grip. Her grip's not very good. I could go on. I could give you 50 things that I see that I don't like. But then again, it's like, what's that one thing? Well, what I did is, as soon as I turned the shaft and got at the angle that I wanted, I saw magical things pop up, and so did she. And so then her confidence jumped up, and then as soon as a player gains confidence, that's when they're the most dangerous, whatever level they are. So with that being said, I'm going to let her hit that shot, and then you can see she's on her back foot here. Her weight's not to her front foot. There's a lot of work we have left, but she's hitting the ball 1,000 times better than what she was. And I just think this is a unique lesson. I don't really I haven't done a lot of before and afters. I had a couple players that emailed me if I would, and so I thought, well, what the hell, why not? We'll just go ahead and do it. So anyway, with that being said, I'm going to open this up. I think everybody can talk now, so we'll go ahead and get started, and any questions you have, just fire away.
Hey, Matt.
Yo.
I watched the video the other day. I'm trying to remember the name of it. Something that down, maybe, where you were pushing the fellow's hips back with the club in the gym.
Let's see. What's the name of the video? I've got my site up. I'll see if I can find it.
Had something to do with working with the down, and you had two cloths, and you were pushing on his hips to get him a little deeper. It was indoor. It was an indoor lesson.
Oh, that's probably way back. Yeah.
You sent it out recently. It's been within the last week.
Oh, really? Yeah. It was indoor?
Yeah.
Hold on here. Just give me a second. We'll see if we can find it. Some of these I post up that they're from way back, but let's see here. I'll try to find it. What, you know the name of the video, the title of it?
The main idea of it was that he was pushing forward as most of us did. That looks like it, right?
This one here? It might be this one.
Hey,
it's
Matt,
dark.
Brendan, can you hear me?
Yeah,
He's talking about stage 2.
Oh, the conversion. Yeah.
No, he's talking about stage 2 functionality of downswing part 1.
All right. Give me just a second
Older
here.
gentleman.
Yes.
Yeah. Give me just a second. I'll find it.
Last video on stage 2.
Oh, I know which one that is. Yeah. I think it was outdoor, wasn't it?
No, it was an indoor.
Indoor. It's in with like a silver garage. Right there. There it is. Right there.
All right. Oh, this one here. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So, what was the question on it?
Okay. The question is, you were talking about his hips pushing forward at impact, which
Yes.
most of us, I think, do. And when you pushed his hips back, when he came through, he had that depth of that back hip turning down that I've really been looking for. And this is the first, like, okay, now I see that with the way you had his hips, it caused the depth of his turn to be not pushing out or
Right
like
there.
that extension, but it more rolling back, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, so I've got the shaft. You can see it right here. I'm using it right there, and I'm driving it into his right hip flexor right there, his or left hip flexor, right?
Yeah.
And so what you see is obviously he pushes the pelvis, their hips forward, however you want to call it, pushes it up towards the sky and rolls the pelvis forward, which is what like just about everybody does really. And so what I'm doing here is I'm having him train he had two things. He was over the top, so I've got my hand on his. This is called partner training, and this is something that I don't steer people away from doing this. It's training with a partner, and I don't have a video. I don't have videos on this yet, but I'm working on them because this is something where guys can really help each other out if they play together and so forth. But so I've got this hand stabilized on the shaft here on the shoulder plane. You can see so the shaft, the side of the shaft's perfect, and the angle of the shaft is perfect. But I had to push the depth. So if some of you players on here don't know what that is and are confused with it, that's just basically he's got resistance going this way with the pelvis because he was just pushing his hips forward, and most people are used to this. They stand up vertical and then push the hips up forward like that. So what I'm doing is I've got control of the shaft as he's training, and I'm trying to create depth in his hips so that he's creating space with the downswing. And we'll just let it play. You can see he's trying to fight. He's trying to push that shaft into me. But you see, even if I've got it right here, he's got plenty of space. Let me try to get up. He's got plenty of space this way. And that's how you should train. So if you're training without a ball, you don't have to train with a ball. I mean, especially on this kind of stuff, you just train without a ball and you just work resistance. And you have to. Some of you asked about the discipline to the plane, and all that means is you're fighting the side of the shaft on the way down. You're not allowing that side of the shaft to tip over or rotate one way or the other. And I'll put that. Hold on just a second. I'll put that in there. I need to put that in there. Because I think, Brendan, you had a question on the discipline of the plane, I think, didn't you? It sent to me the other day. So, but yeah, that's what we're trying to do is create depth. And most people will obviously push their pelvis up this way, and then when they do, there's this kind of this chain reaction that the middle of the spine pulls up, and then that you'll see that, of course, everybody talks about the head pulls up. But it's not, the head doesn't pull up, it's just reactive to the kind of the whole spine here, the knees, the hips, and then the spine. So I don't know if that answered your question or not, but I think it's a good question because in the float, the float it's not just the side of the shaft and what we're trying to do. The side of the shaft's number one. If you don't get the angle of it, the odds go down to and play better golf, in my opinion. Because if you don't get the side of the shaft right in the float, that means that you're going to be playing with fire down by the ball. You're going to be trying to rotate and flip your hands and some of the things that I talk about. So, and the tool you're using is the most important thing in golf. So the body is second to the club. The club is first and foremost. That if you understand how to master using the club itself, that's what the great players you see on the tour learn how to do first, about chipping and pitching and all that stuff. And then the body, if you learn how to get the body to work with the club, that's like icing on the cake, and that's where you start to see, the very, very, very elite. So I don't know if I answered your question there, and if I didn't, just tell me, and I'll see if we got some ways I can show you.
So getting the float correct and getting the float corrected on plane, that'll give you the depth that you got for this guy. That's the main key for that, getting that depth.
Yeah. So if you won't create depth, you can play great golf without having depth in your hips, and I can demonstrate that where I show you how to. I mean, I've seen players. I mean, I've done this so long now, and some of you have too. If you just kind of reflect back, you can see this too, where there's players out there. They stand vertical when they come through the shot. Their spine will be vertical through the shot. Their hips will be pushed forward, but yet they go out and they shoot 72 and win club championships. I mean, Scott Hoke had some of that, Now, you're not going to see most of the tour doing that. I mean, 99.9% of the tour is going to have a lot of depth in the hips, a lot of space, the side of the shaft right, blah, blah, blah. But what I will say is you can play fantastic golf by having the hips not in the right spot, because the tool is your club. And if you've ever seen trick shot artists in golf, you know, where they do trick shots, that you know, they can hit these crazy shots where they're on their back foot, their left foot. I do that when the students come to the school. I'll hit balls off my back foot, my front foot, walking into the ball, walking away from it, and the ball will fly where you want it. If you've done it, if you've seen somebody do this, then you start to question like how important the body really is. I mean, I believe the body can be a very good tool for you, but now if you screw the club up, you're done. If you screw the club up and you throw the club off one way or the other, the wrong direction, it's game over. I don't care how good your body is and how good you work the swing looks and everything, but if you can screw the body completely up, I can hit off my back foot, I can hit it off my front foot. My uncle is a good example. Okay, so my uncle, I believe he's a 3-time club champion. He's never played golf on his left side at all. He's right-handed. He's never got to his left side in his whole life. All right. And he's won the club championship 3 times. That's better than what most people ever get to. And he just did it by playing off his back foot and timing up his hands and his club. And so he would have been better, in my opinion, if he'd have figured out how to get to his front foot. But he didn't have to, is my point. So my point is what's the most important? Is it club or body? I think club's most important. I don't mean swing playing. I just mean how you create timing with the club. Phil Mickelson's a great example, proves it every week. Guy, you know, technically from a swing plane, this guy right here's got better swing plane than Phil Mickelson does coming down. But you know, he's the better player, and so Phil has something in his system that he has this knack, and it's something that can't be taught, so to speak. I think you can teach some of it to get better, but in general, he just has a knack for finding the ball, and so that's why I say, like, you gotta put what's most important. The priorities are far more important. I see guys, you know, working on all this depth with their hips and all this, and their clubs rotated, you know, 70 degrees the opposite direction on the downswing, and they're trying to work on depth in their hips, and they've got it backwards. Like this guy right here is a good example, because this guy went from shooting, you know, 15 over plus or whatever to now I think he's shooting around 2-3 over. Doug is Farrell, he may be on here tonight, but he's playing 2-3 over every time he plays now, and he's in his 70s, and he's doing it because we got the side of the shaft angled correctly. The depth in the hips. This lesson here was a golf school. All right, so he'd been here for, I think this was his second day. It might have been his first day, but it was like the 4th hour. You know, what we don't see here is all the work that we did outside, which is just getting the side of the shaft and the timing built. This is all what we're doing in here, kind of the icing on the cake, if that, so to speak, if that makes sense. So I just want it to be. I think when you talk about the float, we talk about in the float about the angle of the hips and how we sink into the hips and so forth. But if you hear me talk, I always talk about the number one thing is getting the right wrist or the back wrist if you're lefty. Your back wrist needs to be bending the right way slightly until you load the shaft correctly. And once you feel the torque in the shaft in the middle of the club, then you have something you can use against the ball. And that's what, to me, trumps everything.
So you get the side bend in the shaft during the float, and you hold that until it's time to release.
Yeah, when you say hold, one thing I try to do, and I don't have it down to an art, but one of the things is you have to be careful with how you say hold, because, and I don't mean that bad. It's just like Harvey Pinnock was a master. I live in Austin, and the way he could communicate, he would always say things like the way he talked, like he was really protective of how he would say things, so people didn't just go try to, like you were saying, if you try to hold it, well, that's going to, people will try to hold the angle and they'll tug on the shaft. They'll do things that it's just because of the way we say it. And so you want to feel resistant of the shaft, but it needs to feel gradual, and it needs to feel like it's soft and relaxed, but it needs to feel somewhat resistant too as well. And so
Right.
when you bend the side of the shaft, what I think happens is, like, he's got it here. He knows it. I mean, he's ready to crank it. But there's something that goes on in the brain. The brain knows that you got something that's solid. And if you cock the wrist, now if I'm going to go back, I'm going to go back a little bit. I'm going to try to go back a little bit. Give me just a second. I want to show you, because cocking the wrist is what everybody does, and it's makes it so difficult for timing if you cock your wrist. It makes it look like you have this pretty long backswing, but it's superficial. So this is the lady I was telling you about, and so she's cocking her wrist here. So you'll see she even loses a grip. That's not uncommon when you video players swing and so forth. And that's just because she superficially cocked the wrist upward, up and down. And if you side bend the wrist, she doesn't have the mobility to get her club that far back if she was to take the right wrist and then bend it correctly. But since she cocked both wrists, just cocked them up and down, well, it's just this flimsy, superficial length of golf swing. And that's why you see it kind of uncocking and opening, and it's just flimsy. And so I think that's why you see here, this player has bent he's definitely side bended the wrist. He's got the shaft angled correctly. The brain knows right there he can't swing it back much further than that. He doesn't have the mobility because he's bent the wrist the right amount. So now it's measuring his true mobility of his spine and hips and all that. When you cock your wrist, like this lady here, Leslie, she hadn't turned her body probably 25 degrees with her upper and lower body, but somehow she's got this full, I think that's a sandwich he's hitting. She's got a past parallel golf swing, but her hips hadn't turned 20 degrees, her shoulders hadn't turned 20 degrees, and it's superficial. So you don't need a lot of. So when people ask, they say, how much should you turn your body? Well, that's all relative, and it's going to be, relative to the player. J.B. Holmes, when you measure J.B. Holmes from a biomechanics standpoint, he doesn't turn his lower body, maybe 30, 40 degrees, and he turns his upper body about 65 or 70. He doesn't turn much more than she does. But the difference is how he loads the shaft and the side of the shaft and some of the other things. So now, if you can be here, and if you recover, like I'll see if I can pull Fred Couples up here. So you guys just bear with me tonight. I'll do this. Let's see. Let's see what we find here. We'll just use this. Just bear with me, and I'm gonna try to pop this up, because you can see, if you watch Fred Couples, hopefully they don't just they're probably talking about it the whole time. Yeah, that's not slow motion. Let me get a slow motion swing, so because I want you to see that he gets this club where it's not the prettiest as far as swings and all that, but you'll see the float with what he does, and he recovers, so the club's open. You see his wrists are cocked here. The club's pointing 4 fairways over to the right. But then watch how he turns. Now you see the side of the shaft. Now the side of the shaft is exactly what I'm talking about. So he can flick it. He can flick his hands. He doesn't have to hold. It's gone. It's game over. He's got the side of the shaft, and boom. So that's a big deal. I've never seen this video, but I know anybody, you have to recover either before transition or after. And so he's already recovered. Right there, he's already recovered. And that's why it's so important for timing in the golf swing, is to get the angle of the side of the shaft. The guy went from swinging the club, as you'll see, he goes outside, he lifts it up, he doesn't turn much, and he's got the club wide open. He's got his wrists both cocked and cupped, but then all of a sudden he side bends that right wrist, and then bam, he's ready. He's ready to deliver. And so that's where that's why it's so important to get the side of the shaft right. And so it's the same thing if you get now the angle. So if you look at Jim Furyk here, it's the same thing. So he goes up. It's not this pretty swing. He kind of loops around and all this stuff. But if you look, as soon as he comes down, it's not this that he reverses the club back, and like a lot, we all get caught up. I used to do the same thing. Is we get caught up in like, oh man, he's doing all this. He's circling that club, reverse circling the club backwards, and all that. It's not what he's doing. He's getting the side of the shaft angled back properly right here. Now the side of the shaft's angled, and it doesn't matter if it comes in from under plane, on plane, over plane. Doesn't matter. He doesn't need anything. And that keeps kind of going under, but the side of the shaft was angled correctly the entire time. You can see it's not, the side of the shaft hasn't changed from the top. As soon as he comes out of transition, the side of the shaft has stayed the same angle. And he's definitely hit it under plane. He went from being up above plane to neutral plane to under plane, but the side of the shaft is the secret. The angle, what you'll hear a lot of times, let me see if I can do this. It's not going to let me. Let's try this. So what you'll see a lot of times is we get caught, players or teachers will get caught up with how the angles of what that looks like. The angles are not near as important as the angle of the rotation of the middle and the side of the shaft. So that you can, what I'm trying to say is like that's an angle. I can show you players that Fred Couples, the one you just saw, was off his neckline. He's won a major championship or two, or I think one. And then you can watch the shaft angle can be right there through the middle of the spine, which is what you'll hear me talk about the most. But there's the variation that you deal with. But the secret is not the angle of the side of the shaft. Most players are going to be fairly steep, which you can play great. The secret is the angle of the side of the shaft, where it's pointing to. That's what I'm trying to sell. And if you get that, then and you get the sole of the club to train, and you get in the bunker and you train, you've got a 2-for-1. You still have issues because timing is also up and down, and how level it is through the ball. And there's still other things, but you've already given yourself a massive advantage. And so when a player gets up here, let me get Couples up here again. So he's got the club pointed 14 fairways over to the right. All of a sudden he turns the side. Now that's a steep shaft, so I think this is really important to learn. If I can, let me see if I can find my. Everybody still on here?
Yes.
All right. Sorry, I lost. Oh, here we go. Now I just needed the thing I can point to here. So here's what everybody sees. So if you want to talk about steep, and somebody says you can't play with a steep shaft, well, I don't know how steep you can get it, but that's pretty darn steep. All right, that's not where Ben Hogan played from. That's not. But this guy, Tiger Woods said, he goes, I played golf with Fred Couples for like 5 years straight, and I've never seen him hit a shot. And if he doesn't hit a shot, and Tiger Woods is talking about that, he's got a steep angle. So, we saw. The angle is forget the rotation of the shaft where it's angled towards, but the steepness of the shaft is measured this way. Now you could have what most people see on the tours, you'll have an angle like this, right? What we teach somewhere in that area, right in the neutral. But if you couldn't play steep, then my point is with all this is if you can't play this way, because this is where most people play from. Then we would be talking about a Masters champion here, and a guy that just, it was a phenomenal ball striker his entire career. So if you have the angle of the shaft right, which is, let's just say we had it this way, and you had the rotation of the shaft wrong, the side of the shaft was in the wrong area, I'm not going to say you're going to struggle, because that's a big word, but the most likely, if you're an amateur, you're not going to be any good. You could have the swing plane correct, the angle of the shaft correct, which is what everybody's teaching and working on and all this stuff. What we're selling is there's a variation. There's an angle to come in here. There's an angle to come in here. There's an angle to come in like Fred Couples way over here. There's a lot. We're selling that there's a lot of opportunities to play great golf, not just one. But this right here is where, I guess if you say, well, what's that one thing? I want all my players to get this as soon as they can get to it. I'd like to see them do it in their backswing, but if they get it, you have to have it as the club comes out of transition, because if you wait and do it, I'll try to do this. If you wait and do it down here by the ball, it gets really tricky. If you try to get it squared up in here, then you're playing with fire, because you're going to be rolling your hands, flipping it, and then it's just a lot of mess. And so there's probably players on here that know what I'm talking about. If you get it here and you come out of transition and angle it correctly, regardless of the club steep or not, who cares? Now he can just let the club go. He even flips it through impact. As a lot of you seen our webinars before, he flips the crap out of it through past impact. He doesn't really maintain that. He doesn't sustain it, even like what we try to teach. Doesn't have to. But he gets the side of the shaft coming out of transition, which is, he does it. He's feeling what he's doing. Now, I will say this, in his float, as he's coming up, he's feeling the float right in here. He's making movements that you're seeing affected. The effects that you see right here, right there, are happening not there. They're happening right there. They're happening 3/4 into a swing. They're happening earlier. They're not happening at that time. You got to realize the swing's going through motion. So it's happening right there prior. And then you see the effects of it here. And so, anyway, if anything, I think that it gives everybody a lot of opportunity to realize they can be a great player. Because if the angle of the shaft was everything, if that's the secret to the game is the shaft, well, then this guy wouldn't have been any good because that's freaking vertical. And it doesn't take a 5-year-old to figure that out. But that's not what it is. It's the angle, the rotation, the side of the shaft, how he's using that is what's allowing him to do some. And there's a lot of other things too as well. But that is the secret sauce right there. He makes that happen. So you've got opportunity to do it any part of the downswing. I teach it, try to get that thing correct, just prior to the transition, and because it loads the shaft, it loads the center of the shaft, which is the most important part, and the side of the shaft, and so then it just allows for less hand action, All right, let's see here. So I'm sure there's more questions, so just feel free to ask if there's anything else. I'm sure there are. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is Mike Williams, Matt. Hope all's well.
Hello, Mike.
A couple things. Going back to the hips, totally get what you mean about the body. I have, though, in playing with this, found that it's helped to think about that and just keep them going back the whole time.
Okay.
Now, we're in the fields and all that, so I don't want to go too far into that. But
okay.
It's kind of made a big difference, float, keep them back, and then keep going back. That's kind of helped. What I wanted to ask you about a little bit more, though, is I'm wondering if when we look at this on the video, if there's like there we go.
Sorry, I'm sorry, Malcolm.
Pinstriping or something we could put on the shaft of the club.
That's a good question. I'm working on a deal right now for that because you're talking about like the way you angle the side of the shaft that I keep talking about.
Yeah, something that was in your visual frame of reference, be it from the camera or maybe even just if you were posing with it, would line up with the proper angle. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm working on that right now, and unfortunately, that's not some of the areas that I'm really I know I could tell everybody like exactly what it's supposed to look like, but I know exactly what you're saying, and you're 100% right. There needs to be this is the amount, because I do there's the gray areas in how much you bend it, but I much rather like a Dustin Johnson is a good example. He side bends the hell out of it, and it doesn't hurt him. It hurts him in chipping. But you want to get the side of the shaft in an angle where you're not so much thinking about how shallow it is or all this and all that. You're just thinking about how the load, where the rotation is at in the side, and how much you side bend.
And kind of that feel of where it's at in the middle of the shaft.
Yes. No, I agree. I am working on it. I've got a guy coming in town. He may be on here tonight. I'm not sure if he is Ross. Ross is going to build an app that you can use with your phone that for us that'll help you show like how much and I'm not real big into all that stuff. I mean, But I will say that when you get that, there is something about the degrees of, and we haven't even measured it, but when you bend the right wrist, there is something that happens there that just definitely loads the shaft, and players get it. And so what I want to do is, there's another one I'm doing without the app because that'll take a while. But how you, like you said, you can put a stripe on it, and you can see like, okay, it's this much, and gives you definitely a reference of what you're trying to do. And unfortunately, I'm sorry, we don't have anything like that. If you take your right wrist and you bend it, it will certainly give that to you. But there's going to be
Okay, so
go ahead.
let's talk about the bend a little bit. Now, a lot of this is interpretation, probably more so than any way it was in the presentation. But there was a part of it I looked at where the side bend was almost like if you had your hand straight out in front of you and you just took your knuckles and took them straight back towards your forearm.
It's as simple as you shaking hands with somebody and bending your wrist to the right. There isn't any more complicated than that. And if the wrist is pointing down, it's bending.
Is there a little bit of a twist to
Nope.
it, for lack of a better
Nope.
word?
There's no rotation either way. There's not a downward turn of the palm. There's not an upward rotation of the palm. It's side bending. Side bending is not rotation.
Okay.
So where some people will do is they'll try to bend and roll the wrist, or they'll turn down the wrist. It's not that. It's just bending the wrist. And so it's as simple if you took your hand out. This is how simple it is. Is if you took your right hand out right now and stuck it out in front of you, shake hands with somebody, and you just bent the wrist backwards. You didn't open your palm. You didn't close your palm. You bent the wrist backwards. Now, how much do you bend it? I'll tell you. You bend it about half as much as you probably can get away with. If you bend it all the way back, well, then you're going to have some probably issues. If you bend it a 45-degree angle, like a little angle right there, half of that, that's how much side bend is. That's what you're seeing Freddie do here. He's bending that wrist about that much. You're seeing all of them do that. If you don't have right wrist side bend, you don't play golf for a living. You don't play golf that's any good. So it's not like the wrist roll, and it's really, 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 really simple. It's just the right wrist. If you stick it out in front of you and you point it down, point it up, I don't care where you point it, but point it down like you're playing golf, and you just bend it. And then so what happens is, remember, like I talked about in those first videos on where I'm working with the table, is if you're turning back and you're building your golf swing, you're going to turn back without any side bend, and you side bend in your float. You don't want to side bend as you're taking the club back, you know.
There we go. Okay.
You know what I'm saying? You're taking the club.
That is another question I had, which is,
Yep.
I was kind of
When do you
thinking
do it,
of
right?
starting to figure out this must be while the float's going on.
It's when the float is the start of the transition. So, and that's going to be start of transitions when the backswing is starting to. It's before the backswing, right before the end of the backswing, whatever that may be, a backswing that's hitting at 15 yards, 10 yards, or 300. Right before the end of that wrist starts to side bend. That way you don't do it in your takeaway like Dustin Johnson. So if I was pulling up, I mean, it's not like that's all bad, but he doesn't chip well because of that. So let's see if I can find.
Oh, that's interesting too.
Yeah, so we'll, give me just a second, I'll pop it up here. So if you watch him, I'll try to do this slow. But you'll watch he side bends right here. He's doing it right now if you're watching this. His hands are moving forward right there. And then what he does, so he does it early, then he just turns his thoracic part of the spine, and that's why his club looks shut. His club's really not shut. His club ends up being open on the downswing, and that's where guys get confused. But his club's not shut on his side of the shaft's literally perfect. So if you look at the face there, you can even see it. And so you don't need to do it. My point is you can do it right there. It's not even that he's pushing his hands forward. What he's doing is he's kind of putting pressure on this right wrist. He's putting pressure, that side bend, because there's torque there. He's found it, and he's found it at a young age, I'm sure. So he puts pressure forward, and you can just see it. It's going this way. It's going down, and just the true side bend. And then he just turns. He doesn't really bend his wrist much after that, and that's why his club ends up looking a little shut. So he struggles with chipping a little bit just because when you bend it like that before the takeaway, the club will be shut on short shots, which is the worst thing you can do on short shots. But it's not a bad thing to do, as you've seen with Lee Trevino and other players, and Graham McDowell and anybody else. You can do it late in your swing and you're fine. Most people, you're going to have a certain amount anyway. He has more than you need because he's got super flexible wrist, and he does it before he even starts his golf swing. So in my opinion, you're going to want to do it kind of after the takeaway. You're going to want to do it. The best place is wherever the float's going to start. That's why I always say to do it. The side bending starts there, wherever that transition's going to start. That float.
I got you. So that leads me to one more question,
Sure.
and I'll knock it off.
No, you're fine.
Gives the chance, but on I don't have a better term for this. And I hate to use the old terms. So is it more of a one-piece takeaway with the bend coming? With the float type deal, ideally.
Yeah, I think that I hear what you're saying with the one piece. It's the one. It's a whole. What I believe is it's a whole piece. So like when I say on the backswing was what I feel like is that you have, if you separated these two sides, as soon as that club's moving right here, this side right here is moving. So you forget this side. This right side's going to start turning whatever he does. So he's going to start turning that right side. And you can see he's already started to turn. But that's what I would tell you is to think that it's the whole right side moves. But you do have to pay respect, like we talk about with like that table that I use on the side of the shaft. That's why you don't just turn and lift the club straight up or twist it back inside or roll it or anything like that. You keep it. You keep it connected, as far as, in my opinion, and a down the line video is better. And I'll try to. We'll see if we can pull one of those up, because I know what you're saying, and I don't want to bash anybody's terminology. I understand what you mean, though. But here's Adam Scott. He's playing pretty good. So when he takes it back, and everybody's going to have a different takeaway too. They don't have to do it perfect. I just kind of show a basic reference of how to build your swing. But if you look, if you had the table here, this camera's going to move, but here's that table. It's laying right on it, and so he's just taking it. They're right here. The club's not rotating. It's not doing anything. He's just basically laying it right on that table. He's turning. If you watch it, you look at his right side. He's turning a lot right here. So he's turned 30 degrees, and he's got the club that's been laying. It's still on the table. He's laying it, and then you can start to, even right here. You look at that right wrist. It's bending right there. He's already done it. He's doing it right now as we're speaking. So that right wrist has been bending, and then it's bending, and so forth. Now here's where you get where most instructors will talk about the angle of this shaft. But I've already shown you that Fred Couples is a phenomenal ball striker, and so is Adam Scott. But they're two different. You look at Fred Couples, his was vertical. So this is what the general population of golf they see. They see their swing here on video, and somebody says, "Well, you have to be here." And so they try to get this flat swing plane or whatever, this shallow downswing, and they don't end up being any good either way, because one, the way they're training, the process, they're trying to do it at a 7-iron or drive or full speed. It's not going to happen. You're not going to fix anything. So the training, the process, in my opinion, is equally as important as understanding that there's a lot of variation. You can come in steep. You can come in, everybody loves that. It's what I try to teach. You can come in underneath. Sergio's not bad. Jim Furyk's not bad. He comes in under here. So there's the variable angles of attack. You have to kind of find your style. But what you don't want to mess around with, the center of the shaft and the angle of the side. And I'll say that for all. And you say, well, what causes that? It goes back. The right wrist is what causes that. Just look at the angle. I'll erase this. Look at the angle. See if I can dial that in. You can just look at the angle of that. If I can dial this in, maybe not. Oops, screw that up. See if I can. But if I bring this in, you can see the angle of the right wrist. That's a bend. Don't think of left. Everybody used to think of left. Flatten the left wrist. The right. Don't worry. Left wrist. Forget it. Right wrist. You get the right wrist, it'll dominate the left. And so that's the thing that you want to get, in my opinion, really good with. And like I said, he's got the side of the shaft angled right here where I don't care if his swing is this way, if it's up, it's whatever. He's got control. He's got the torque. He's hitting it with the side of the shaft here. He's not hitting it with the club head or the handle. He's hitting it right in the middle. So, and you probably already doing it.
Great sense, man. Thanks.
I'm sorry, Mike. What's that?
No, I was just saying, beautiful. It's starting to fit together. That makes a lot of sense.
I'll do my best on this follow-up video, Mike, and the rest of the guys listening on here. I mean, I try my hardest. I don't have all the answers, but I've got some things on timing that I don't think that are out there that can really help guys. I don't care if they're a scratch player on the tour or 90 shooter, that will give them a serious advantage. And I'll do my best to break that down because I think you brought up a fantastic question. It's one that's been in my mind quite a bit about how much and what the kind of the stripe on the side of the shaft. How do we do that? It's been in my mind, so it's a fantastic question. But I will say this: is if you just the simplicity of it is not too difficult. But I'm a big believer in visuals. But if you put your hand out like you're shaking hands, you point it down at the golf ball, and you bend that right wrist back just sideways without opening it or closing it, palm up or palm down, none of that, just side bend. That right wrist, that will tell you that's what we're looking for in the float. And then it's half of however much mobility you have. And so you'll see there's I don't know how much, 30 degrees, whatever it may be, there's a certain amount you'll feel like, okay. Then if you take it back and you turn and you do that, you'll start to feel some torque in that right wrist. You'll feel it, especially if you're holding a golf club, you'll start to feel torque. And if you feel torque, if your brain connects with that and feels it, it can use it. And that's what we want to do, is we want to be able to create that torque and then be able to apply it. The problem is when we cock the wrist, like the lady Leslie was doing, she was cocking the wrist. You can't pull something you don't have a hold of. So she was cocking the wrist. She didn't have any torque, so she couldn't use anything against the golf ball. As soon as she had torque, her brain just naturally took over. I didn't teach her how to hit the ball. She figured it out. She was like, oh my God, I can just knock the hell out of it now. So, but anyway, I thought that was I'll put that in the follow-up video, and I'll do the best that I can do to try to break it down so everybody understands it. So anyway, that was a great question. Are there any other questions?
Man, all the discussion with the striking the ball with the side of the shaft. Are you a proponent of guys getting their shafts pured?
Well, I have to be honest with you. I am, just because of my club fitting background. You know, they've even found in puring the shafts. I mean, that in putting it's even better because it's the stability of this. When they do that, that's what it does. It stabilizes the shaft from. So, if some of you that don't know what that does, is when you're coming down here, this shaft right here is trying to bend and droop, and it's called droop, and you can Google that. Don't waste some of you players. Most of you probably actually know what that is. But the club droops, kind of tries to droop up and off plane. That's why you see a lot of players that the shaft's trying to. I'll do my best. The shaft's trying to go that way on everybody. Great players are able to resist that and keep that down. Great players. So there's not, how many Adam Scotts are on here? I mean, the natural way it's trying to do is trying to pop up and it's trying to go high. And when you pure it, it keeps that from bending and rotating out of that natural plane as much. And so, yeah, I believe it. I think that I think even getting your shafts fit, I mean, I'm a big believer in fitting. That's why when you get a shaft that's really too soft, I don't want to lead people to get too stiff here either, but like if you get too soft a shaft, it bends more in this flex point, and it bends and droops off plane more. And so then you're dealing with more torque in the face. Like, now I'm not talking about what I always talk about, torque to face, the golf ball to the face relationship, but the rotation that this shaft's trying to go around the hosel on. So you start to lose some of that, the softer the shaft. If you get too stiff, then what happens is the energy locks up into the hands and into the elbow. So there's wrist injuries here into those tendons, and then if you can even see here, he's fighting it a little bit here. There's some neck tension. If you just look at his facial expressions, there's some neck tension there, which is not uncommon for even the best. That if you get too stiff, the energy will start to rise up, so you will hit the ball typically a little thin, and it'll feel like you're hitting